So the bottom of this scale is 20. It's the very lowest thought that you can have. And it will always weaken you. Not only will it weaken you, but it will ultimately destroy you, such as its weakness. It's at 20, it's shame. So if you are using shame on yourself, or you're using shame as a way of parenting or working with others, what you are doing is you are always using an emotional energy that will weaken. The emotion that accompanies shame is called humiliation. And the life view is one of misery, and the God view, the view of God, is one of despising. God despises us. We are ashamed. There's something wrong with us. The next level up, which is very, very low and will always weaken you, is 30, is guilt. Feeling guilty. The emotion that accompanies it is blame. The God view is one of God as vindictive. God is punishing. And the life view is one of life is evil. There's something wrong with life. The next level up is one that's called 50. And this level is the emotion that accompanies that is despair. So that apathy and despair go together. The God view is one of God as condemning. And the life view is that life is hopeless. There's not much that we can do. The next level up is 75, which still weakens us. It's grief. The emotion is regret. God's view is disdainful. And the life view is one of tragic. Life is tragic. We are now moving to 100, which is called fear. And the emotion that accompanies fear is anxiety. The God view is one of punitive. God is punishing. And life view, frightening. Life is frightening. Now we move up to 125, what he calls desire. And the emotion that accompanies that is craving. Always wanting to get someplace else. The life view is one of life is disappointing. And the God view is denial, denying. Now we move to 150. We are still at emotions and thoughts that you have that will weaken you. At 150, the emotion that accompanies it is hate. The life view is that life is antagonistic. And the God view is that God is vengeful. We are now moving closer to that which will strengthen us, to something called pride. Pride. And the emotion that accompanies pride is called scorn. The life view is that life is very demanding. And the God view is that God is indifferent. Doesn't care one way or the other. Now we move to 200. We are now making a distinction between being able to recognize truth from falsehood. This is called courage. And the emotion that accompanies courage is affirmation, affirming, life is affirming. The life view is that it is feasible. And the God view is that God is permitting. God allows us. All right. Now we move to 250. We are now talking about emotions and thoughts which strengthen us. At 250, trust is the emotion. Neutrality is the level of thought. The life view is life is satisfactory, and that the view of God is that God is enabling. God enables us. We move now to 310, what he calls willingness. Willingness. Whereas the emotion of willingness is something called optimism, an optimistic view of life. The life view is that life is hopeful. And the God view is that God is inspiring. Now we have moved from God being despising and vindictive and punitive and vengeful and indifferent and permitting and enabling to now God is inspiring. At 350, acceptance, the emotion is forgiveness. I accept and I forgive. The life view is that life is harmonious, and the God view is that God is merciful. mercy. We now move to 400, where very, very few people ever get to, called reason. The emotion of reason is understanding. The life view is that life is meaningful. There's a meaning to all of this. And the God view is that God is not only merciful and inspiring, but God is wise. Wisdom comes with knowing God. Now we move to 500, which we're talking about a handful of people. The level is called love. The emotion is reverence. The life view is that life is benign, non-cancerous, non-debilitating. And the God view is that God is loving. At 540, the level of joy, where there is sadness, let me bring joy, remember. The emotion is serenity, a sense of just being serene in life. The life view is that life is complete. I am complete. And the God view is that all is one. All is one. At 600, the level of peace, the emotion is bliss. So it's not just serenity, but it's bliss, which is that wonderful, great, good feeling, continuous. Life view, life is not only complete, it is perfect. And the God view, all being. And finally, enlightenment, between 700 and 1,000. The emotion that goes with the sense of enlightenment is what he calls the ineffable. Ineffable. Life view, everything is. There's no judgment. And the God view, self. The self is God.
How would we think and act in daily life if we were truly aware of our divine essence? Obviously, there wouldn't be room to reproach yourself because we wouldn't doubt our abilities. In fact, we'd never look in the mirror and feel anything but love and appreciation. We'd see ourselves as fully capable of attracting all we desire. We'd treat our body with reverence and care, giving thanks for its divine design. We'd celebrate every thought we have, knowing its divine origin, and we'd become aware of our enormous talents and be awed by all that we are. We need to encourage the awareness of our magnificence in every regard. When that awareness has been reawakened, the seedlings of inspiration will begin blossoming. Here's a way of expressing these fundamental truths offered by the writings of the Baha'i Faith. This most great, this fathomless and surging ocean is near, astonishingly near, unto you. Behold, it is closer to you than your life vein. Swift as the twinkling of an eye you can, if you but wish it, reach and partake of this imperishable favor, this God-given grace, this incorruptible gift, this most potent and unspeakably glorious bounty. There's no way to be in spirit without a changed awareness. So when we accomplish this, we give ourselves the gift of moving from being flawed, limited, lacking, and imperfect to being completely comfortable with our magnificence. This unspeakably glorious bounty is so close to us, all we have to do is make a few twinkling-of-an-eye adjustments. So why not begin right now? Here are 3 of the most obvious and important changes in awareness that you can make. 1. Changing the awareness of our magnificent talents and abilities. I want to emphasize an extremely important point. I'm not talking about self-esteem here, nor am I referring to levels of confidence. Rather, I'm saying that we need to keep the important question, who am I, in the forefront of our mind. This question doesn't revolve around previous life experiences, has nothing to do with what we've been told our special qualities or unique abilities are, and it isn't related to how worthy or worthless we feel about ourselves. It has to do with a simple truth. As Epictetus, a philosopher in the 1st century A.D., said, "You carry a God about within you, poor wretch, and know nothing of it." Just like Epictetus, who was born into slavery yet became one of our most profound teachers, we came into this world with an inexhaustible supply of talent. Our abilities are as limitless as God's are, because we're a distinct portion of the essence of Him. And there's an infallible way to begin entertaining those abilities and creating as he does. That way is to become aware that anything that excites us is a clue that we have the ability to pursue it. Anything that truly intrigues us is evidence of a divine, albeit latent, talent that's signaling our awareness. Having an interest in something is the clue to a thought that's connected to our calling. That thought is a vibration of energy in this vast universe. If something really appeals to us and we feel excited but perceive ourselves as devoid of the talent we think is necessary, it's probably an even higher vibration. Anything that's causing excitement within us is evidence of a spirit message that's saying, you can do this. Yes, you can. If we react to this message with anything other than, you're correct, I can do this, I have the ability to do it, then we've selected the vibration of resistance and ignored the vibration of excitement and interest that spoke to us. Our thoughts about who we are, what excites us, and what we feel called to be and do are all divinely inspired and come with whatever guidance and assistance we'll need to actualize these goals. The decision at this point is, are we willing to listen to these divine thoughts that pique our interest, or do we go on listening to the false self that's made us what Epictetus called a poor wretch? Rather than case studies of which I have only second-hand knowledge, I'm going to use some examples from my own life that illustrate listening to the false self. My background would appear to be an unlikely one for what I'm calling magnificence. Here's what it would look like on paper. Fathered by an alcoholic who abandoned his 3 children, childhood years spent in foster homes, a classic underachiever, educated in public schools, grew up at the low end of the socioeconomic scale, no financial advantages, no examples of or ambitions for higher education, 4 years as an enlisted man in the United States Navy, admitted to a university on a provisional acceptance at the age of 22 due to lower than average grades in high school, worked his way through 3 advanced degrees by being a cashier and a stock boy in a grocery store in Detroit. This isn't exactly what you'd call a prescription for becoming the best-selling author of 28 books and a successful public speaker. I couldn't begin to tell you how many teachers of creative writing and speech gave me low grades for my efforts in these fields. All I can say for certain is that I've always had a knowing about my interest in writing, have always been excited by the prospect of entertaining and informing an audience, any audience. By all of the accepted standards, I didn't have any writing ability. What I did have, and still do, was an interest and a passion for writing. It inspired and thrilled me, and I simply loved it. From the perspective of inspiration, I had the ability to do it, and that's all I needed to know. Then as now, I trusted that the universe would handle all of the details, including, will I be published? Will the critics approve? Will my book be a bestseller? Will my mother approve? Will I get an apology from any of my old English teachers? But really, who cares about any of this? The fact that writing excites me is all I've ever needed to know. When I follow that thought and stay with it, I conclude that I have the ability and the talent. And so do you. Like me, it's easy to find what excites you. What do you find intriguing? Does learning yoga and becoming an instructor interest you? Then you have your answer. The issue isn't about ability, it's about being matched up in spirit with your current thoughts and behaviors.
The softer you are, the less rigid you are, the more flexible you are as a person, the more you can accomplish. And this is a great way to practice in parenting as well. And this idea that a rigid thought, how many times have you heard this idea that if I tell you something, I'm going to stay consistent with it. We have a set of rules, these are the rules, and we'll do it this way. In the Tao it says the more rules you make, the more rule breakers you create. It's true. The more rules you have in your house about how everything has to go. We had in our house, my wife would have a big jar of M&Ms. Peanuts, you know, all these different multicolored ones. And the kids in our house, because we didn't feed them sugar and we didn't give them sodas and stuff like that. So they were just more like a decoration. Every once in a while someone would take them. They'd hardly ever be replaced. Now when we had kids come over to our house who weren't ever allowed to have such horrible things, you should have seen their behavior. You know, they would scoop them up, they'd be putting them in their pockets, and they'd get their purses, and they'd open it up, and, you know, the whole thing would be empty. I said, what are you doing? He said, well,
you mean you could just have these whenever you want them? I said, well, we don't really have any rules about that. It's just, it's not something that we encourage or discourage. It's just there. It's like Emerson had a wonderful line. He said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. A foolish consistency, a rigid consistency. So that there are many people who will say, if I say it on Monday, you can be absolutely certain that on Wednesday, I'm going to believe the same thing, regardless of what might happen on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday might have something real that you might want to be changing your mind. You might want to say, you know, I thought that this time, but now I've seen this, and now we can shift. And you can see how this can become and so much about the Tao is on leadership. Leadership in the family, leadership in the community, leadership geopolitically. Less rigidity, more openness, more willingness to listen and say, I changed my mind. Because a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And what I believed on Wednesday has changed because of what happened on Tuesday. Now, another important thing to say to your children, to your friends, to your lover, to your spouses, to whomever, to the people you work with, words that we're so terrified to say, but which give us a sense of living with the Tao. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look it up. Say it. I don't know. Doesn't hurt. Say it again. I don't know. Isn't it fearful? I mean, so many people, and it's like very freeing, because my kids ask me something, and I say, I don't know. They say, Dad, you know everything. You know everything. I say, well, I don't know that, and I'll look it up, or we'll try to find an answer to that, but I don't quite know. I know that I spent 20 years running, and I ran every day for 20 years, for 22 years, without missing a day. 8 miles. Never missed a day. That's rigid, all right? Some call that obsessive. But you brush your teeth every day, I used to say, and you don't call that obsessive. And you go to the bathroom every day, and you don't say, well, he's obsessively doing that again today. You don't do that. But anyway, what I learned is that even in the world of exercise, there are certain things that are built in to make us rigid, to make us stiff, to make us hard. And we lift, and we run, and we kick, and this is what we call working out. There's another kind of working out that is ancient. It goes back to the time of Lao Tzu and before, which is called yoga. And yoga means union. It means union with your source. And when you do yoga, you can stay in the same place. You can do the equivalent of 8 miles. When I used to run 8 miles, I had to run 4 miles that way, turn around, 4 miles back. And I'd be sweating. Now I can do yoga, and I can just stand in one place. And in 90 minutes, by being supple, by making myself stretch, by not being hard and rigid, I can get that out there. I can get that leg up. I can do these kinds of things. And 90 minutes later, it's like I'm totally sweating, and I feel so different. I used to, when I would go out at night to eat or something, after running so many miles, running marathons and doing those things, I'd go to get up, and it would be, okay, it's going to take a little while, because everything was so like that. That doesn't happen anymore, because I've given up hard. I've given up being rigid and substituted it for being supple, for being flexible, for living a life in which I don't have to always be so fierce. Listen to this verse of the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my all-time favorites, verse number 76. A man is born gentle and weak. At his death, he becomes hard and stiff. All things, including the grass and the trees, are soft and pliable in life, dry and brittle in death. Stiffness is thus a companion in death. Flexibility is a companion in life. And it's not just for how you exercise, it's how you think.
In order to cultivate your witness, you need to learn to observe your reactions in order to go beyond them. It is the going beyond that is the crux of the sacred quest. There are many ways that you can use the observation process. Here are a couple of them that are very important. The first is observing your body. This is one of the areas of being the witness that most of us have practiced somewhat. In general, we allow our body to function without interference. We are aware that there is the body and that there is a ghost in the machine, if you will. For as long as you can remember, you have been observing this phenomenon of a body. It is also true that you know that the entity that is doing the observing is removed in some dramatic way from that which it is witnessing. As you are listening to these words, you are allowing your body to act out its destiny without your meddling. You are not busy beating your heart or filling your lungs or oxygenating your blood supply or circulating your vital fluids. You allow your body to operate itself, and you allow another part of you to know the way of being the divine, quiet, non-interfering observer. This way has served you well. By just observing your body and detaching yourself from its functioning, it works as perfectly as it was ordained to. If you were constantly monitoring and attempting to control your bodily functions, you would be unduly attached to its outcome, and you would inhibit its natural functions. The times in your life when you worry or interfere with the natural functions of your body are the times when you find it breaking down. Feed your body the wrong foods and it will respond with lethargy and disease. Fail to exercise it and it will become overweight and groggy. Ignore its needs for fresh air and healthy environment and it will fall into disrepair. Feed it narcotic substances or artificial drugs and it will react with violent symptoms. When your body is in any state of disrepair, from being overweight to having back pains or nervousness or influenza or cancer or anything that is not the way of perfect health that your body knows at the cellular and genetic levels, then you are being called back to the position of loving witness. The second way of observing is called observing your mind. Your mind is filled with thousands of thoughts every day. They come and they go like trains in a terminal. One enters, another takes its place, one exits, and along comes another. First, you want to watch your thoughts. Then you want to watch yourself watching your thoughts. Here is the door to the inner space where, free from all thoughts, you experience the bliss and the freedom that transport you directly to your higher self. The simple exercise of watching your mind manufacturing its thoughts will eventually cause unwanted, unnecessary, erroneous thoughts to dissolve. In the process of cultivating the witness, you learn to quiet your mind, to take inventory, and dispose of or reassign thoughts that generate self-defeating or ego-centered responses. In this simple process, you also come to know your spiritual self. Ego-generated thoughts play a huge role in creating the world that the ego wishes to create. Each of my thoughts seem to demand it be considered the most important. Troubles begin with a thought that you put into your mind and allow to fester to the point of anxiety. The anxiety begins to manifest in your life in physically destructive ways, which we call things like arthritis, high blood pressure, and career cardiacs. The loving, non-judgmental energy received from the observer or the witness will allow these thoughts to flow in and out as naturally as the ocean tides. Tides in, tides out. Thoughts in, thoughts out. You will learn to be a witness to your thoughts in the same way that you observe the tide. And the process will cleanse and redistribute and remove thoughts in much the same way as the driftwood on the beach. What remains is generally quite pleasing. Witnessing your thoughts will take some practice. With proficiency comes wonder and delight. Trauma is dissolved in the thinking stage and prevented from manifesting into your everyday world. Begin to notice the noticer. As you take note of your worlds, both inner and outer, begin to familiarize yourself with the noticer who is behind that which is being noticed. If you do this several times each day, you will begin to see that you are much more than just a body and mind going through the program motions of your life. Your realization of your true self as the witness behind that which is being witnessed will bring you a new dimension of creativity and bliss. Try on this exercise. Think of something that has been bothering you for a long period of time. Now go to a quiet place and close your eyes. Just see the problem surfacing on the blank screen in your consciousness. Notice all aspects of the problem, what it looks like, when it shows up, what you feel when it is on your mind, the pain and the fear that you have when it is present, how you have dealt with it unsuccessfully in the past. Think of everything that you can which is related to the problem. Then, detach yourself in your mind from the problem. Just allow it to sit there on the screen of your mind. Look at it from the viewpoint of the compassionate witness who just non-judgmentally notices the screen. Watch it like a movie. allowing it to change in whatever way it does. Just observe it with loving permission for it to do whatever it wants to do. You will see it change and fade in and out of awareness. With each change or movement on the screen, remain in the caring witness mode of knowing the energy will do what it will and will also be accompanied by the loving energy from the witness. Often, just this act of observation will result in a feeling of the problem having dissipated. If that happens, observe that also from the position of caring observer. I once practiced this act of observation when I was injured and unable to play tennis. I reacted at first to the pain in my foot with statements like, "This injury is keeping me from doing what I want to do, and I'm really upset about it." I found that no matter what I tried, the pain persisted, and I was unable to pivot and consequently had to discontinue an activity that I loved. I then took the witness stance. I no longer saw myself as having an injury. I attributed the pain only to my body and not to me. I witnessed the entire thing and merely watched it. I lovingly witnessed the pain, the way it showed up, my feelings of frustration about it, the color of the swelling, everything. But I refused to think of it as mine. It was only my body's problem. The very same day that I did this, the entire discomfort disappeared. I mean, it was gone from my body. I had put my attention on what was occurring and detached myself from it. And in what seemed like a few hours, I no longer had the pain and I was playing tennis as if I had never experienced any injury at all. In order to know the benefit of witnessing, you will have to banish the doubt about this as something that will work for you. Remember, you have been conditioned to believe that your body is the essence of your humanity. You've been taught to tackle problems with your physical and intellectual apparatus, not your higher self. Practice new self-talk sentences to replace your old identification with your physical body. I am that which owns this body. I am not the body itself. I can't be reached if you come to me with hatred or anger. I cannot worry when I refuse to be the worrier and simply observe that worrier and the worries. Self-talk sentences will keep you centered on your spiritual domain. You will find that many things that you worried about or experienced in a negative fashion are slowly beginning to diminish from your life.
Let's go for a moment to our dream. And just assume that we're going to have a dream. We're in bed. And let me ask you this question. This is a question I like to ask for you to just contemplate, one of those sort of cones. When you go to sleep at night and enter your dream state, what happens to the bed? Just think about that. What happens to the bed? Now you're in your dream, okay? So just propel yourself into a dream state. And in your dream, you notice, let's say you're over here and you're in a room. And in this room, you look across the room and you notice that there's a podium in the room. And it has some objects on it. Now you're in your dream. So in the state of dream consciousness, you say to yourself, I would like to examine that podium more closely. How do you do it in your dream? How do you examine it more closely in your dream state? Do you get out of bed? Is there a bed? Now we're talking about 1/3 of your life here, folks, okay? 1/3 of your life. As Lao Tzu said, I went to sleep and dreamt that I was a butterfly. Then I woke up, and now I don't know. Am I a man who dreamt he was a butterfly, or am I a butterfly who's dreaming that he's a man? So in your dream state, do you get up out of bed, keep it right over there, say, excuse me, honey, wait, get out, and walk over and say, there's a galley of a new book, and there's a pen here, and there's a glass of water, I think I'll have a drink of that. There's a microphone stand, there's things. Do you do that? No, you don't do that. Because you enter your dream without any doubt. So what you do in your dream state is, are you ready? Shoo! Stay alert. And you bring it to you, don't you? In your dream state. Why? Because you have the power of your intention, can have an idea, and whatever you need for the fulfillment of your dream, you bring to you. Here it is. Here it is. Whatever you need. So you're 20 years old in your dream. and you need a jerk to be married to for the next 20 years, there he is. Isn't that great? You need a Maserati? There it is. Whatever you need for the dream, you bring to it. Then you leave the dream and you come into waking consciousness, and now you look back on the dream and you now have a whole new set of things that you've introduced. And that set of things is called doubt. And the second key to higher awareness, which I'll get to shortly, is called banishing the doubt, but it's connected here. As you enter your dream state, you enter without any doubt about your capacity to do anything. So you can fly, you can jump over trees, you can be young again, you can transcend death, you can stay underwater, you can communicate telepathically with anyone that you want to, right? You have all of these incredible powers. And if someone has died and you want them back, you bring them back. If you need to be 12 again, and then you come into this state and you say, I can't do any of those things because you're stuck in paradigms. And the paradigm says, you cannot change your shape, you can't shape shift. If you're a certain age, you're a certain age. You can't move yourself into, you can't be in more than one place at the same time, which you can do in your dream, easily. You can't do those things. And one of the things I talk about in Your Sacred Self is like learning to become a waking dreamer, to understand that you don't have to go to sleep in order to dream. So now you wake up, and what I'm suggesting to you is that this is also a dream, only it's a 100-year dream. And in this 100-year dream, everything that you can do in your 8-hour dream, you can do in this 100-year dream. Everything. If you know better than to doubt it. And if you get rid of the paradigms that muck up your life. You have the capacity. But the minute that you introduce doubt into it, like that poem that I started out, Real Magic, which is really my effort to write about how to manifest miracles in your life. From Samuel Taylor Coleridge, he said, what if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there picked a strange and wonderful flower? And what if when you awoke, you held that flower in your hand? Ah, what then? Is it possible to bring something from a dream state into a waking state? Or is that part of a paradigm? And the tiniest smidgen of doubt that enters your consciousness is what you will act upon. 7 key little words from Proverbs. As you think, so shall you be. If you think that it's not possible, what you think about is what expands. Or as Emerson said, the ancestor to every action is a thought. And the minute you have a doubtful thought in your consciousness, you will act upon that and manifest the fruit of that doubt. And not be able to see it. You will not see it.
The solution for me represents the ability to bring to your life something that can make these things called problems disappear, dissolve, and nullify. And that is what I spoke about when I opened up here a little while ago about energy. Energy comes in the form of fast and slow, high and low. And higher and faster energy nullifies lower and slower energy. A room full of darkness. Darkness is a lower and a slower energy, if you measure it, than is light. And when you bring light to the presence of a dark room, the darkness disappears. And that is a metaphor for every single one of the problems and concerns and struggles that you are facing in your life. And way back, 800 years ago, there lived a little man who gave up all of his possessions. He lived in a little village in Italy, near Florence, called Assisi. And we named one of our most famous cities in America after him. His name was Francesco, or as he became known later after his passing, St. Francis of Assisi. And I went to Assisi, and I had miracles that took place for me in visiting Assisi on several occasions. And St. Francis was one of these people who created a prayer that is perhaps the most well-known prayer on the planet today, certainly one of them. How can I become an instrument of thy peace? The ego is the part of us that wants to be at war, that wants to defeat, that wants to collect, that wants to be better than, that wants to always get more. The sacred or the highest part of ourselves is the part of us that just wants to be at peace. How can I become an instrument of peace? Not someone who's looking for peace, but someone who delivers it. There are opportunities every day. I was in a gas station just a few days ago, and in this gas station they had a car wash. And there was a young boy, he was maybe 18 or 19 years old, and he didn't speak English very well, and he couldn't figure out how to work the car wash. And he had put $2 in, and apparently it required $3. And he was in there waiting to pay for his car wash and trying to get an answer to why he couldn't get it to work. And I had just gotten some gasoline, and I walked in, and there was this man behind the counter berating this young boy and humiliating him and talking to him. And because he didn't understand the language, he talked louder to him. You know how people do that? You know, if someone doesn't understand you, you say, what I said is, and they say, I don't understand, and then you say it even louder. Well, that's what he was doing to this young boy. And I saw this is an opportunity right here, in this instant, to be an instrument of peace. And I put my arm around the young man, and I said, come with me. And I walked out to the machine, and I took $1, and I put it into and he walked away, and he was just so happy. One tiny little incident. These kinds of things, I suggest to you that you take this day and look for 5 occasions to be an instrument of peace. And you'll find one when you're on your way home, on the freeway. You'll find somebody who isn't going to let you get in. You find somebody who doesn't want to let you pass. And instead of, giving them a hard time or being angry at them, try sending something called peace their way. There's a wonderful line that I have on the dashboard of my car. It says, I can choose peace rather than this. And it's always a reminder that no matter how what I'm experiencing in my life, I want to be an instrument of peace. It's been said that the 3 most difficult things to do in the world are this. The first is to send love in response to hatred. The second is to defend the absent. That is, whoever's being gossiped about, you become their spokesperson. I do this with my children all the time when they're all saying this and then she said that and he said that. I'll say, excuse me, but who is defending the absent person here? Well, why should anybody defend her? I'll say, well, I'll just take her position right now if you don't mind. And the third is to admit when you were wrong. And it doesn't mean necessarily to say I just made a mistake. It means to say, I have been making the wrong kinds of choices in my life with my mind. I've been putting my attention on what I don't want, on what others want from me, on what the world ought to be, on what it used to be, and I can't understand why it just keeps showing up, what I don't want, what others want from me, what I despise. I have to admit, almost I have to rewrite my agreement with reality. And so much of what St. Francis was speaking about back in the 13th century, because he was a man who was ridiculed wherever he went. And he was just out there trying to teach people to bring the solution, spiritual solution to your problems. If hatred is existing in your world, that's an energy field. It's a lower and a slow energy than the energy of love. If you can bring love to the presence of that hatred, it will be nullified just as if you were bringing light to darkness. But for most of us, what we do when we see hatred is we respond in kind to that hatred.
Your desire to attract prosperity represents a highly spiritual request. It's perfectly attuned to the law of abundance from which you originated. Your imbalances are energies in the form of thoughts that you mistakenly believe will bring about the desired prosperity. Following are 7 of the most common thoughts that make the manifestation of prosperity virtually impossible. Number 1, it's not God's will. By blaming God for not having what you need or desire, you justify a built-in excuse for accepting your lot in life. In reality, as St. Paul reminds us, God is more than willing to provide you with the blessings of abundance
In fact, God is pure abundance, but you're the one out of balance on the prosperity scale. By putting the responsibility for your shortages on divine will, you create enormous resistance energetically. You're asking the universe to send you more of what you believe in. The solution to removing this barrier, which applies to all 7 of these resistance energies, is changing the belief. By first catching yourself in the midst of a fallacious thought and replacing that thought with something like, I am a creation of God. God is abundant. I must be what I came from. Being like what I came from means that God wants me to enjoy the fullness of prosperity. This is how I'm going to express life from now on. 2. There's a limited supply. This thought represents enormous resistance to a restoration of balance on the prosperity-scarcity scale. Thoughts such as there's only so much to go around and everyone can't be wealthy. Once again, the solution for removing this kind of resistance is to purge it and replace these thoughts with new energies that match up more harmoniously with the truth of the world that you live in. Try thinking of money in the context of the ocean. There's an infinite supply, more than enough to take care of your needs. The supply of money circulating around this globe isn't diminished no matter how much you take for yourself. Why? Because ultimately, money, like ocean water, has to return to its source. It just keeps circulating as energy. Take 1 million gallons from the ocean, and it still remains the same. Here's how it works. Abundance is scooped from abundance, and abundance remains. 3. I don't deserve it. Here's a simple rule of thumb. When you believe that you're worthy of prosperity flowing into your life, then you'll attract precisely what you do believe. If you believe that attracting money into your life is in some way inconsistent with a spiritual consciousness, then you erect barriers of resistance to stop this flow. And the universe, being what it is, it submits back to you precisely what you believe about being undeserving. To change this idea and rebalance yourself on this scale, you need to realign your desire with the energy of your thinking. You need to keep reminding yourself that you are a divine piece of God. Feeling as if you're unworthy of God's abundance is the same as denying your spiritual essence and insulting your Creator as well. Remember that you came here to be just like God. But you broke away from that idea when you believed more in your separation than in your unity with your source. Silently repeat something similar to, I am a piece of God, a divine, individualized expression of God. I am worthy and deserving of all that God is and all that flows into my life. The abundance I desire is on its way, and I will do everything I can to avoid blocking and resisting this divinely inspired flow. And 4. I have limited abilities and talents. If you hold a belief in your mind that you don't possess the ability or talent to attract abundance, then you've weighted your balance scale with a lifetime supply of scarcity. This is a huge symptom of resistance masquerading as an excuse for why you're coming up short on the prosperity balance beam. Your inner vision will trump your innate talent every time. In fact, if you have the confidence that the skills or abilities you need are readily available, then you're on your way. Number 1, banish the excuse of no talent. And number 2, create an inner picture of attracting prosperity. And number 3, act as if by being what you desire. Act as if by being what you desire. You're as talented as you've decided to be up until now. Change the picture, and miracle of miracles, you change your talent as well. Number 5, I've never been lucky. The universe that you live in, and that lives in you, operates on energy and energy alone. Nothing happens until something moves, said Albert Einstein. Everything is vibrating, even what seems to be motionless. Your universe functions with the law of attraction, meaning that energy matches up with similar energy. Your thoughts are vibrations of energy. Low thoughts, those that are out of balance with source energy, attract low energy responses from the universe. High, spiritually based thoughts activate identical vibrations that bring you what you desire in harmony with your source. That being said, there's no room for luck in the universe. If you have an accident, you aren't unlucky and you're not at fault. You're simply a vibrational match to whatever you collided with in that moment. By viewing your world in this way, you can begin to exercise more choice about what you're matching up with. By changing the lower vibrational energy of your thoughts to higher vibrations, you set into motion energy that seeks to match your higher desires. 6. It's always been this way. When you use your personal history to justify why you're presently out of balance on the abundance scale, you're really saying, I have a long history of attracting scarcity into my life, and I intend to continue doing precisely the same thing. Thinking that the past is responsible for your continuing insufficiency is a major source of resistance. You've probably been taught that if you don't pay attention to the mistakes of the past, you're bound to repeat them. Here's my take on that advice. Keeping your thoughts on the mistakes of the past guarantees that you'll continue manifesting them in the present. I think you're better off tossing out your personal history or any deficiencies that have surfaced in your life. Refuse to think about what's failed to materialize unless you're hoping for more of the same. Avoid talking about your bleak past. Don't identify yourself as someone whose childhood or early adulthood was characterized by dearth and paucity. Instead, look upon your entire history as a series of steps you absolutely needed to take in order to bring you to the present realization of your endless potential for abundance. Be grateful for all that failed to show up. Then shift from resistance to the direction of manifesting your desires and rebalance your thinking so that it matches up with those desires. And 7. I don't know how to think abundance for myself. When you're convinced that prosperity consciousness is akin to a foreign language, once again, you've opted to resist rather than allow. You may not believe that you have the capacity to think in the ways that I've elaborated here in this chapter, but I assure you that you do in spades. It is you, and you are it. Your belief that you can't think in these ways exists only because you've allowed yourself to believe in your separation from your source.